Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for How AI and Talent Analytics are Revolutionizing the HR and Recruiting Sectors. Sponsored by Humantelligence and presented by Juan Luis Betancourt. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that this webcast has been pre-approved for HRCI credit and can also be used for SHRM credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. After the webcast, you'll receive an email from HR.com within 1 to 2 business days that will include your certification credit information. You can also log in to HR.com and go to your View My Credits page where you can see the credits that you've received. If you have any questions today for our presenter or for HR.com, please type them into your questions tab on your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll be sure to follow up with you. And it's my pleasure now to turn you over to Juan Luis.
Thank you, Sylvie. Thank you all of the people attending today on this webinar. I'm the CEO of Humantelligence. We've been around for about 2 years, since early 2016, since I took over the company and the technology. My background, just I think it's important to know who's speaking. I was well educated there at the bottom. Was blessed to be born into a family that focused me on education, so I'm thankful for that. I then, at the top, starting with Procter & Gamble right out of college, where I learned about brand management as well as about management in general, as well as HR. Siebel Systems was one of the fastest software growing companies. We went from 20 million to 2.8 billion in just 2 years, from 200 employees to 12,000 employees in just 1 year. So it's actually the fastest growing company that's ever been recorded. So I was blessed to be part of that organization. And then I was the CMO and Chief Strategy Officer and the de facto Chief Operating Officer for Puma, the sports brand. I helped lead that turnaround back in 1997, 98. And then I was the CEO of a $200 million sports retailer up in the Boston region. If anybody knows MVP Sports, I was the CEO of Decathlon MVP, part of a global $45 billion sports manufacturer. It's actually the largest in the world, called Decathlon. I worked in France for 5 years. Then after that kind of operational career, I moved into HR, the specific talent acquisition recruiting area. I was a partner at Heidrick & Struggles for 3 years, then Korn Ferry for 3 years in New York and Miami, respectively, then launched my own firm and worked for private equity firms, finding them CEOs and CFOs for their portfolio companies in their funds. Fun facts, or now looking back, since our recently elected president, depressing facts. I actually was on The Apprentice in the fall of 2010. Since I was a well-known recruiter, I was picked to be George's replacement on his right, on Donald Trump's right side in the boardroom, to tell Donald Trump who to hire and fire. My claim to fame on that episode was I'm the first person to actually fire 2 people on one show, which didn't do well for the executive producer, so we had to shoot a whole nother episode. And I also was good friends with Malcolm Gladwell from The Connector, the book Tipping Point, where he writes about the connector. Okay, enough of that. Me, now you know my background. Although I look like I'm 35, I'm actually 47, and I've had a long operator career as well as HR career within recruiting. Gives me a purview, and also on a global scale, 12 years living outside US working. Gives me a purview about what's coming down the pike, and what my current role as CEO of Humantelligence for 2.5 years has shown me, something that's going to impact all of you in your HR roles, whether you're talent development, talent acquisition, CHRO level. This is going to happen. I don't know if it's my company or another company, but what I'm going to present today is the future, and all of you should know and be alerted to the fact that this is coming. The world of EQ is going to now balance the world of IQ, and so all of you will start to learn what corporate culture really is, not kind of what you define on a whiteboard and tell everybody to be that way, but there will be tools that will allow you to know the culture of every division in your company, to know the culture of your high performers, which is very different than the culture of your low performers. And if you believe that everybody in your company is a high performer, good luck with that. It's not the case. So there is not one company culture worldwide. You can define one that you want. There is one vision, there's one purpose, but in terms of culture, your finance people, their behaviors Their motivators and their work styles are very different than the people in sales, which are very different than those behaviors, motivators, and work styles of people in marketing. And then within each one of those divisions, your high performers have very different behaviors, motivators, and work styles than your low performers. There will be tools and AI that lets you measure with KPIs human psychology that leads to performance and non-performance. There will be tools that will allow you to know where your teams are balanced and not balanced. HR based on subjectivity, okay, is going to move to HR based on data. Okay, this is happening, and this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. Okay, our specific company focuses on the recruiting side and not sourcing candidates. So we're not an AI for finding candidates. I don't believe that the problem is getting resumes. The problem is now, what do I do with all those resumes, and how do I find the good people from those resumes? So that's one aspect of what we do. And we also have a culture analytics platform that allows you to understand and more importantly, measure for the first time culture at every level in your organization, from an individual to two people, to a group, to a division, to a company, to a country, to a company. And then using AI to balance and load and do internal mobility and recruiting based on all the insights you get on data-driven understanding of your employees. Long-term, our platform helps improve employee engagement, reduce turnover. So now to the more thought leadership part of this presentation for the next 40 minutes. This is the agenda. It's the current state of technology and AI, artificial intelligence, in hiring. We'll go over that first. Then key indicators that your hiring process might be missing the mark. And then how and why you should be looking at team culture at a deeper level as part of your recruitment strategy. And then at the very, very end, the last 5 minutes before we get into Q&A, I'll just tell you kind of a little layer below what I just showed you about what we do. And then I think at the end of the hour, when your official credits and this thought leadership piece is over, for those who want to stay on for 10 or 15 minutes, I'll show a demo of our platform, but only after the hour, and anybody who wants to jump off, feel free. So the current state of technology and artificial intelligence and hiring. Most of you probably are familiar with Mr. Burson, who's now been acquired by Deloitte. He has produced all the thought leadership and white papers sponsored by Deloitte in his HR consulting division. And they've come to some of these conclusions where HR is a good target for AI because many HR practices are handcrafted, cultural in nature, and could be better at handling data. So again, data is coming down the pike. It's not just me saying it, it's one of the top researchers on this and consultants. 40% of companies are using some form of AI in HR. Recruiting is basically where a lot of that is being applied with AI. Most major HR software vendors, Oracle HCM, Workday, Taleo, some of these others are introducing products with AI that help you help applicants pursue a given job. Attributes in the background might be a good fit, etc. Career development is another focus where tools will analyze mobility patterns within an organization. Okay, and then there's going to be sentiment analysis on social media, online surveys, feedback loops. All this will give you, HR, a lot more data to understand the pulse. So pulse surveys, the pulse of your current group of employees, which is different than culture because surveys don't do anything for culture, by the way. So Pepsi and Coca-Cola, two very different companies, can both do engagement surveys by either Perceptics or any one of the many companies out there doing engagement surveys. And the results could be exactly the same: 20% extremely engaged, 50, 60%, somewhat engaged, and then another 20, 30% not engaged at all. That doesn't mean that they have anything to do with each other in terms of culture. A second data point that thought leaders are realizing that surveys or engagement surveys are not actually culture is the interview process. When you're interviewing and trying to hire for fit and you have your final 5 candidates, you would never pull up your engagement survey and say, okay, let's see the results of our engagement survey and tie it into this moment of hiring and this employee potentially, this candidate, and how they might fit or not based on this. It's because engagement surveys are exactly that. They're a pulse survey of temperature, not of the DNA, not of the culture of your employees. Okay, Gartner white paper, August 2017, the impacts of artificial intelligence and machine learning on human capital. They basically come out with this major study that they believe that all forms of AI and machine learning are transforming how HR processes are getting done. It's happening with bots. in the engagement of candidates when they apply for roles, for feedback and getting things done at the corporate level. If anybody has a question, using technology and AI to identify answers to questions. So application leaders, and I think that's also now being driven through HR, should invest in these innovative techniques to drive efficiencies, adoption, and improved employee experience. So Sylvie, first poll question. Do you use a candidate assessment tool in the recruiting process?
I'm going to give it another second or two here while everybody's voting. And I am going to close the poll.
Great.
And share the results. So if you're seeing these, we have 52% with yes and 48% with no. So pretty close.
Great. So basically half of you do use assessments in the recruiting process. Sherm in January of this year came out with an article around the predictive assessments give companies insights into candidates' potentials. So many of you might not know that these assessment tools, self-assessment tools like DISC, Predictive Index, Galometer, Caliper, Humantelligence, all these different tools often do accurately measure aspects of somebody's psychology, mostly around just behaviors. Most of them don't get into the motivators, let alone work styles, but at least for behaviors, they are accurate. And most of them have been accredited with being EEOC compliant. So you can use these without fear of getting sued for profiling or discrimination. So you should look into potentially, for the 48% of you who do not use these tools, start looking into it, because as you get overwhelmed with the hiring process, a great way of saving time on your interviews and phone screens is using one of these tools or a combination to kind of get from the 50 great, you get 500 resumes, 50 of them are good, 1 in 10 resumes. Well, it takes 3 months to go through all those people, the phone screens and face-to-face interviews, spending a lot of money on HireVue. Well, why don't you just give an assessment and get to your final 5, knowing now that you can depend on them a lot better. This article comes out with, the fact that they are now scientifically validated and reliable, and that 82% of companies are using some form of pre-employment assessment test, okay? And these assessments do evolve. We're constantly evolving our own assessment at our firm. Hunt Scanlon came out with an article around recruiters face a double threat from automation, but there's also good news. So basically the controversy here is, what's going to be left for recruiters to do? Or is AI and data analytics going to eliminate recruiters in the talent acquisition role? Okay, these are tasks that relate to human emotional and intellectual connection, the interviewing, et cetera. Well, I believe that no, it's just going to make talent acquisition folks better at what they're doing, right? It's kind of like a data scientist without data. His role or her role wasn't eliminated when technology and servers and reams of data could be assessed. It just made data scientists that much smarter with better insights. It's the same thing. It's just going to upgrade talent acquisition and recruiting and make you more efficient and make the hiring process more efficient. So, in terms of interviewing, yeah, you're going to be able to eliminate a lot of your interviews and let you focus for 3 hours on the final 5 candidates versus just getting through these people through the pipeline quickly and doing 30 and 40-minute quick interviews. Ability to assess where people will fit in and work well or not. So once you hire someone, be able to onboard them better. So you still onboard people today. Now I'll just give you data to show you where the friction will be with the manager, with the team, and how to ensure a good start with an organization and a team and a leader of new candidates and hires. Assess the third bullet point, assessing whether people have the ability to ramp up for a job that they're not yet qualified for, assessing learning ability, assessing how a person can work under stress, assessing cultural fit. That's where we focus on. All of those are now a data-driven effort, and not so much needing the recruiter or God forbid, I was a professional executive search consultant at Heidrick and Korn Ferry. We were paid hundreds of thousands of dollars because we could identify through recruiting better someone's fit. Well, I can assure you now that I have data, when I thought I was great at what I did, the reality is it was a guesswork. That's why those firms only give you 3 to 6 months guarantees. With our tool, for instance, recruiters are giving their clients 1-year guarantees. So with real data, there's less risk on a bad hire. Okay, Forbes came out in 2018 with an article, the 4 key HR trends to watch for in 2018. So one is shifting from employee engagement to the employee experience, okay? 2, the race to digitize HR. And by the way, on the first point, let me stop there for a second. We often go to a lot of these conferences and hear a lot of heads of HR, CHROs, who have a lot of experience, a lot more experience than me, going from having no engagement surveys for 30 years to now a plethora of engagement surveys and pulse surveys, and the pendulum went from like not really getting a pulse at all to now tons of data. Right now they're overwhelmed with the data, and what do you do? And what's worse, not doing engagement survey or doing one, getting all the people excited that the company's going to do something about it, and then not having the implementation and the process change management to actually go in and make changes based on employee feedback, and then have employees disgruntled because nothing's been done with their feedback. And so a lot of companies have actually gone back away from using them as deeply as they thought they would at the beginning. And so I think we're still finding our feet there, and Forms, their research finds the same. Second point, race to digitize HR. So AI, machine learning tools, data analytics, they've disrupted recruiting. They've helped lower costs in obtaining candidates with better fit, finding resumes, these crawlers out there that go in the internet and find you resumes and find you people they can go out and get. Again, though, I believe, though, the bigger challenge for you is not for the recruiting people out there in the talent acquisition. It's not finding the resumes. It's actually interviewing and getting them through a process so you find the right fit. There's been studies that show that 30% of success on a job is based on the resume elements. So education, which is a litmus for intelligence, grade point average, or the cognitive of somebody, years experience, references from people who know that person, all of that only leads to 30% success. 60% success is actually the basic elements of fit, the behaviors, the motivators, and work styles, how they fit with the team and the culture of the organization. The third point, people analytics, entering organization structures. So data analytics, generating real actionable insight to support people decisions. So one thing is getting engagement surveys. Another thing is having the data analytics and the BI, the business intelligence people, able to mine that data and see patterns and trends to get insights. Data by itself doesn't help a company. An engagement survey by itself doesn't help a company. Assessment tools like what we work in, no assessment tool by itself helps a company. There's been 60 years of assessment tools. They've been kind of a waste of time because an assessment tool is a point solution by itself. A unique, just one person assessment result doesn't really help a company. But if you can aggregate, and if an assessment company is truthful and sells the assessment for a much cheaper price, right? An assessment tool comes out without the need for a consultant for an offsite, where it's not just for your execs, but if you can get an assessment tool and the insights around behaviors, but not just behaviors like all the other tools, but insights where we work in, for instance, around motivators and work styles, you get that data for all of your employees, for all of your sales, for your top and your low, pull out that data. Well, now with data analytics, you can get insights around what leads to performance. Again, an assessment tool for one person, not sure that's worth an investment. An assessment tool that you can get for everybody, that's, if it's priced low enough, there you're going to get data analytics applied to that to get insights around performance, around team balance, around what leads to optimizing your company, team by team, person by person, every 2 people, to improve real engagement, understanding, communicating, connecting better to unleash the power of your people. The fourth point, the gig economy redefining workplace. So, talent sourcing, building speed and agility. Okay, everyone is going to be working remotely. You're going to have to slice and dice people to fill roles even more quickly. You thought it was bad when the average time of work went from 6 years to 2 years. Well, that's a strain and a stress on your HR department that has to still fill the needs of the organization. But now with people who are jumping around like millennials every 2 years, it's going to get even worse, where you're actually going to outsource almost 50% of your company to contractors working from home. There's going to have to be a platform where you can just find people based on skills and fit quickly without the burdensome process of a 3-month recruiting process at every level of your organization. We're now ready for poll question number 2. which of the following tools does your company use? So option A is a culture analytics type tool or a talent analytics tool that looks at data around your employees. B, artificial intelligence for sourcing candidates during your recruiting process, so just finding resumes or finding people who are good. Or C, an AI tool for filtering candidates based on, let's say, culture fit.
Results are coming in. About half of the audience has voted so far, so we're going to give it another maybe 10 seconds or so.
And they can vote for all of these or only one?
They can select all that apply.
All that apply, okay.
Okay, I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And share the results. So we have 38% culture analytics or talent analytics, 38% AI for sourcing candidates in recruiting, and 33% for AI for filtering candidates in recruiting. So again, really, really close.
Great, so about 1/3 in each category. So I think for all of you who aren't spending time or money on the other tools, you might want to talk to your CHRO to identify what types of tools out there can help you in the other categories where you're not spending it. Sorry, my finger got heavy there. Let's see here. I'm seeing my own face, Sylvie. If I hit the X, will it turn my video off? Let me see here. I fixed it. I got it. Thank you.
Got it? Okay.
Yeah. So what are some of the artificial intelligence recruiting tools out there? Well, by the way, this is only like 10 to 15 of hundreds of tools. Okay, I encourage all of you, if it's now that it's the beginning of 2018, January, February, March, Q1, often this is your last chance to kind of identify a strategic project that is approved by your management that is not related to your reactionary kind of looking back what we need to fix from last year and do better this year, but a strategic project where you can say, hey, CHRO, I want to spend 2 hours a week for the next quarter on a strategic project to learn about the space. So I would suggest learning about what tools are out there in AI for recruiting for all of you talent acquisition recruiters out there is something that you might want to get approved quickly because this is happening fast and furious. So any one of these and many more, there's about 100, you might want to start doing research around this so you can by Q2 or Q3 come with a cohesive strategic plan and budget assigned to that plan to maybe leverage some of these tools in these different areas. For instance, sourcing candidates, screening candidates, communicating with them, scheduling them, engaging them, matching, okay, a recruiter chatbot, rediscovery. You know, the benefits of all these are increased diversity, reduced time to fill jobs, increased efficiency in hiring, helping candidates to find jobs, helping companies find the right candidates. It really is time to start spending on the right areas, and data analytics and AI for recruiting are those areas that could make your life, you know, the solution is not just hiring more people, it's working more efficiently, and data will help you do that. The self-assessments out there, there's a lot of them, right? There's Predictive Index, there's DIS, there's Caliper Hogan, or Humantelligence, we're in the first corner. So what you need to look for is not only do they measure behaviors, they all measure, we all do, okay? But which ones, you know, measure also that first blue circle, motivators, which are more important than behaviors, ideal work styles, and people's priorities. Now, as you can see, a lot of them don't do that. So you need to ask them, do you have a tool that can do that for us? We want to see a complete picture of the person. Also, it'd be great if some of the tools ask them if they give you leadership tips on how to lead and motivate and communicate. And so when a tool like this is used, ask them if within your organization, everyone instantly has access to this data across the other divisions, where John can pull up Mary before a meeting if he's never worked with Mary and see how to communicate with Mary, how to motivate her, how to influence her, what is her values, her motivators and behaviors and work styles. Is that data free flowing throughout an organization, or are they point solutions? That's the first question you should ask any assessment tool company. Does your tool integrate with all the other HRIS tools that we currently have? Because if it doesn't, you're going to spend months, 3 to 4 to 5 months integrating it, and then what use is data without it being able to roll it up and seen across an organization? Second circle on the far left, ask them if they can roll up data by group or team. Again, all these other solutions out there that are just point solution assessments, that's not going to help you get insights about your company that you can then use for recruiting. So you might want to ask them, hey, do you guys allow us, the company, to own the data and do the slicing and dicing and looking at high performing salespeople versus low to identify what works? Or do we have to spend another $200,000, tell you what we want you to do with the data, go back into your database that you own the information and send us a report to our CHRO 3-4 weeks later where you come in and present the information? It's all great, but then what do we do with that data? So is the data a point solution stored outside of our organization, or is it integrated into the processes and the actionable usage by every person in our organization? Key question to ask when you talk to assessment vendors. Also, how predictive is it? Is the AI for predictive success based on data across the country? So for instance, if I'm Coca-Cola and using an assessment tool for a sales hire, is the zigzag chart they're showing me that's a great salesperson, is that zigzag chart, which God forbid, I don't know what that means, but if you tell me company XYZ assessment company, if that's a good salesperson, is it because you've done 20 million assessments for salespeople? Or is it because that's the chart for someone at my firm and you can give me a score for people who we're hiring versus people in my firm? Because the culture of a salesperson at Coca-Cola, they could be the best salesperson ever, but if they fail it, if they go to Pepsi hiring a great Coca-Cola salesperson, they could fail. Or a great consultant at BCG goes to a great McKinsey consulting firm, they could fail there. Again, culture is more important than just having been good at that role in the past. And then the last thing you should ask is, how much does your tool cost? Because if tools are costing you more than $5 and $10 per person, or even $1 per month in recurring revenue to have access to that data, if they're up at $5,000 and they bring in consultants, well, there's a new model, okay? Your grandfather assessment tools either need to start to price the products where you can get more data and more insights and more value, or they're going to go out of business. And so you should really push them on their pricing, where you should know that you can start to test 5,000 people in a company for $50,000 total, right? Whereas today, there are certain players here on this screen that would cost $50,000 for 10 executives. You can get better tools and do all of your employees and get all the data insights than just 1 or 2 people. Okay, second section of this presentation, key indicators that your hiring process might be missing the mark. So poll question number 3, this is one of the most fun poll questions I do. The resume that we all use, we love it, we all use it for hiring, has not changed since it was invented, and it is still used for 99% of hiring. Can all of you try to guess when it was first used, or at least documented, where they found the first actual resume, the oldest resume ever found? Is it the 50s, early 1900s, the 1800s, or the 1400s?
Okay, I'm going to give it another 5 seconds or so. And I am going to close the poll in now.
Wow, really surprised. Never had such a high response rate for the correct answer. Usually it's 2% of people get it, but yeah, 1400s, 17% of you got it right. Almost 1 in 5. Basically, you're looking at the first ever documented or found resume. Leonardo da Vinci, the guy invented everything, even the first resume. At the age of 30 in 1482, Leonardo wrote a letter with a list of his capabilities, you're seeing them there, and sent it off to the Duke of Milan, a guy named Ludovico il Modo. Okay, you're looking at the first resume ever. If you type that resume up, It doesn't look any different, maybe without the name and the contact info at the top, but it doesn't look any different than a resume today. So what we're talking about here is there has been no innovation, major innovation, okay, in 400 to 500 years, because basically the resume was the last major innovation. LinkedIn, there's a reason why LinkedIn lost half of its market cap last year. LinkedIn is no longer helping you find the right fit for a role. They're just throwing you so many resumes that you get 2,000, you literally go through the first 50, okay? And then you're overwhelmed, okay? And it's only finding fit for skills, not fit for the company and the culture and performance, okay? That's why they're losing half their market cap, okay? But they're working on things to bring in the equation of the EQ, not just the IQ, so that when you use LinkedIn or JobVite, Indeed, or whatever job board down the road, they're all going to have an EQ piece added to the IQ piece, and it's coming. So you should keep your eyes open over the next 6 months. There will be announcements by some of these job boards that are going to say, hey, now don't just hire for skills, 30% success, hire for fit, the other 60%. And then there's the 10%, the je ne sais quoi part of hiring, which you still need to meet people. And there's just some element that will never be quantified through data. But at least you'll get 90% predictive success instead of the 30% today using these tools. So the recruiting process is broken. It's subjective, it's costly, it's time consuming. Predictive performance, again, it's really based on the IQ, not the EQ. That's why I said before, successful salesperson at Coca-Cola fails at Pepsi, BCG fails at McKinsey, and vice versa. The hedge fund manager at Occidental fails at Bridgewater, and the Baxter Pharmaceutical, high potential, somewhat likely to fail at Teva. Okay, everybody's focused on the resume skills or reference checking, which doesn't really have much of an improvement relative to EQ and cultural fit. Measuring corporate culture and team culture is elusive, right? I went through Coca-Cola, right? The team culture of people in finance, that's the behaviors, motivators, work styles of people in finance, different than people in sales, different than people in marketing. Now, corporate Coca-Cola US has a very different culture than Coca-Cola Brazil, right? Ethnic cultures and nationalities have an impact on culture, as well as Coca-Cola Nigeria and Coca-Cola China, right? I live in Miami. The Starbucks is composed of clients, okay, who are mostly Latin. 52% are born outside the US and Latin America in Miami. And the people working at Starbucks Miami are Latin. Well, there are certain attributes in terms of behaviors, motivators, work styles for those ethnic communities of clients and employees, as there are in Philadelphia, where I went to my business school at Wharton, where there's a lot of African Americans and Anglos, and that's a different cultural mix, which leads to different motivators, behaviors, work styles, and different from, let's say, the West Coast in Seattle, where Starbucks was founded, where in a store, the composition might be more Asian in Seattle, which are also different behaviors and motivators. And you can use that example for people in Brazil and different parts of Brazil, which are very different, or Mexico, or in France, or in China, right, with different subgroups. Well, now you'd actually be able to identify the right cultural fit to face your customers, to hire for best team performance. It's not one barista with one cooker cutter way the whole world. It's multiple ways of behaving. Okay, the US is a great country because we rejoice in differences in motivators, cultural, ethnic diversity. Okay, the hiring process is overwhelming. Okay, it was like the phone book, right? Everybody used to use the phone book, you know, that 1,000-page thing. It went online and the yellow pages went out of business because now everybody had access to that. Same thing with LinkedIn. If they don't start to add value on the fit piece, okay, they're also going to go out of business. Forbes article in November 2017, robots come to job search, AI-powered headhunters disrupt recruitment industry. So basically, they've done tests now where there's this woman, famous woman, Helena, an AI headhunter. She was not a real person, or created by a recruiting platform, and she delivered better results with employers who accepted 52% of the candidates forwarded by her than the actual recruiting firm, real live people. Okay, this compares very favorable to performance of human recruiting agents where the average is 20%. Okay. So it's not going to replace people, but you should start to use the data to get a better mix of that. Existing recruiting tools fail. Online job boards, job sites fail. They're just finding skills, not fit. Behavioral science tools are failing. It's only for the top executives. They're expensive. They're confusing. You need a consultant to explain the results. So HR has to become an expert. You have to get certified in 6 months. So it's like a whole burden. Why not a tool where, and they exist today, you should go out and find the ones where you can give to all your employees, where everyone gets self-awareness, where everyone understands each other, not having to go to an offsite, but where the tool on a handheld or any device just tells you, oh, how to motivate this person, communicate with this person. Okay, how should I write this email better so I can make more of an impact? Okay, how can I be a better manager instantly by looking at my team? Oh, these two people aren't getting along. Let me pull up their profiles. What are tips to make them work better together? Mary's not right. John's not right. They're just different. Okay, that is now reality. There are tools out there you should look at that deliver that promise. And then ATS tools, applicant tracking systems, all the ones listed there at the bottom. Okay, they just manage a process. You need those. At any size company that you are, you need an ATS, and there are different functionality for different complexities in your processes. Okay, make sure they integrate to other platforms. Point number one. And two, make sure, and they're going to be coming out with it again the next 6 months, that they also have a screening process, not just for finding resumes and managing the process, but also for helping you find fit. That's also coming out very soon. Again, the premise of this presentation, data will bring the EQ, emotional intelligence, into this IQ-driven business world. Here are some of the existing tools. This is old school. These tools aren't going to make it very much further, okay? Here is LinkedIn. You know, you do a search for LinkedIn and for director of pharma, okay? You get 1,567 results. What do you do with that? Are you really going through the 400 pages or more? No, you just go through the first 20, right? People are busy, they're lazy and or overwhelmed. Doesn't matter the reason, people aren't finding the best people now with job boards because it's just fill a hole versus fill a hole with the right fit. LinkedIn, they suffered. They went from $200 to $50 a share to $100, no, $200, $100 a share a year and a half ago, and that's why Microsoft bought them. So the future, hiring the right people, skills for the right role with a fit. So the past has been the top left, skills fit, IQ. The future is behavioral science fit, EQ, team fit, hiring manager fit, corporate culture fit, and ideal position fit. Or you'll be able to clone your high performers if that's important, or look for diversity where you want differences. These tools will allow you finally to ensure diversity. Today, people just hire who they like, so there's no diversity on teams. Everyone just hires if they're decisive employees. If they're belonging employees. If they're helping employees. You need to be able to hire someone you don't like, okay, because they're a better fit for the team. Turnover rates are between 15 and 30%. And by the way, I think, Sylvie, can you confirm that this presentation will be sent out to all the participants so they don't have to scramble to take all this data down?
The participants right now can download the slides from the handout section of their GoToWebinar control panel.
Great, thank you. Reducing the cost of turnover and bad hires. Imagine there'll be tools that through recruiting, you will reduce turnover by 30 and 40%. So a huge cost saving. You, HR, will be able to add to the bottom line revenue, a bottom line profit, not just in the future using tools through recruiting. These are other case study turnover costs. $30,000 jobs or less cost you $5 grand if you fire them or they quit. $50,000 jobs, 10 grand, and more than $75,000, 15 grand. So part 3, how and why should you be looking at team culture? Poll question 4, can you articulate your own team culture? So again, everyone be clear. Before you answer this question, this is not your company culture, okay? This is the people who work for you, not what the company puts on a whiteboard or a booklet. Can you actually articulate right now 20 things about your team in terms of behaviors, motivators, work styles, where you're sure what it is as a group for the people who report to you? These are the 4 options. Yes, you can easily think of 20. 2, yes, I think I can maybe get some, explain some. 3, maybe, but I'd be kind of guessing it's not really scientific. Or 4, actually, no, I've actually never been asked that question.
Okay, I'm going to give it another 10 seconds or so. Votes are still coming in. And I am about to close the poll.
Great, thank you. So on this question, since you guys are HR and you study this, it's amazing, right, that only 24% can do it accurately. That means only 24% of HR people are good at hiring for fit, because if you don't know for sure the culture of your team, how are you hiring for fit? And if it's 24% who are sure of it in HR, I can assure you it's much lower. It's actually 5% for any other function within a company. So imagine 95% of your hiring managers and team leaders cannot articulate their actual team culture. And if they cannot articulate their team culture, how are they hiring for fit? What they're doing is hiring who they like. They're doing group interviews and saying, well, we all like that person. They have the right resumes, so they must be a good fit. No, that means they're just like everybody else. No diversity. Okay, this is a problem. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Peter Drucker says it all the time. Well, he said it all the time. Everybody knows that phrase. But today, there really are no tools to measure culture until our tool. Accurately, keyword accurately. There are 2 or 3 companies that take surveys asking the top brass, the C-suite, the top VPs, hey, pick from this list. What do you think you are? What do you think your culture is? That's not, by the way, your company culture. It has to be a bottom-up survey where people don't even know what you're asking, okay? That's how self-assessments will actually get there, where you'll be able to give a self-assessment to your whole company, roll the data up, and actually then know what the culture is, because nobody knew what they were asking, okay? So poll question 5, is company culture very important to you and your C-suite? Is this something you guys talk about as a strategic initiative or a competitive advantage? Yes or no?
Okay, we've got the results in for that.
Great.
Overwhelmingly, yes, 93%. Yeah.
So we did this about 2 months ago. It was the same. It was 90-10. This is 93-7. So basically everybody agrees corporate culture and understanding your culture is a strategic imperative. Now, all the magazines, this month's Harvard Business Review came out with the Penguin article there, Culture Factor. But ironically, on page 11 of that article, they say the challenge, though, is even though it's really important, no one knows how to measure it. You can just do surveys. That's the closest you can get to. I wish they would have interviewed our company, because we actually can measure it for companies. And then a year ago in March, HBR came out with the new science of team. There are now tools like ours which measure team and team compatibility and optimizing team with data, okay, through software. Yes, psychology through software, and group behavioral dynamics and social dynamics through software. It has that time has arrived. Wall Street Journal came out with its search of a perfect team. That said, culture is very important to 93% of you. What companies here have a budget to spend on culture, and how much? So let's see. Does your company spend more than $1 million, $500,000 to $1 million, $250,000, $250,000, or there's nothing budgeted to measure culture? And this is not a budget for Pizza Fridays and Mindful Mondays. Okay. And it's not a budget for engagement surveys. Okay. This is what budget do you have to spend to actually measure, even if it's a survey, let's say, which is not accurate, but let's say, what are you spending on understanding the culture of the company? Again, not engagement surveys. It's not culture. Okay.
And there are the results.
Okay, so basically half of you have nothing budgeted. the most important thing for the company and nothing budgeted. This is the most important poll question that you need to take back to your bosses. Everyone has this problem. Culture is so important. It's a competitive edge for a company, but we don't budget anything against it. Can anybody see a disconnect there? I understand why. There's never been a good tool that's been accurate, okay? There are now accurate tools. Go out and find them, okay? Contact us. We'll tell you which ones are good and which ones are bad. Not just us, but there's others as well. 90% of you, which is the same as the 300-person poll. Today we have 100 people about, but the 300-person HR.com poll 2 months ago, 90% less than 250,000 to zero on the most important thing to a company. Okay, what we have found, and Bain Consulting found as well, okay, 68% of leaders think their culture is a source of not just important, but competitive advantage, and only 10% ever get there. Why they don't ever get there? If you don't spend behind culture, if you don't have a tool that can measure it, of course you're only going to get 1 in 10 companies who luckily get there, right? And usually the smaller ones, the more highly distributed with a distributed workforce, the less likely you'll get a consistent culture. And 95% through our surveys of over 10,000 people, okay, team leaders cannot articulate their own team culture. So again, how can you get to a vision if you can't even articulate what you're hiring for? Okay, this leads to not ability to measure, no tools out there, or very few to evaluate candidates for culture, and recruiting tools fail today. None of those recruiting tools are on the left. ATS, behavioral science, job work, reduce turnover. There are tools like ours that reduce turnover. Those tools don't reduce turnover. This all leads to bad hires, misaligned culture, low engagement, high turnover, in a sum, underperforming teams and organizations. Interviews are completely useless. Those aren't my words. I know that sounds bombastic, but even the Yale School of Management, Professor Jason Dana, wrote an article last year in the New York Times, 10 years of research showing that basically people, when they do phone screens or face-to-face, they're looking for themselves. They don't know it, but it's a subjective bias. If I'm decisive, I want quick, decisive answers. If I'm deliberate, I don't want that. I want slow and steady, methodical. Okay, if I'm conceptual knowledge-based, I want conceptual answers. If I'm a hiring manager who's very practical, I just want yes or no practical answers. Okay, there's so much bias and subjectivity in the recruiting process, way beyond, you know, if I'm white, I hire whites, black, hire blacks, you know, Korean, I hire Koreans. Way beyond the racial and ethnic bias, there's behavioral, motivational, and work style bias, okay, which is rampant. Now you can actually measure for that bias. The future of recruiting and performing organizations and high performance is matching the IQ with the EQ, as we've been discussing all conference. The Chevron CEO and chairman just stepped down, basically said, hey, the one thing I learned in my career was in leadership is to learn how to develop your self-awareness. This is not a tool. Assessment tools are no longer just for the top elite. Assessment tools should be for the 99% of employees who are your customer-facing employees, to help them understand and read others, to really improve EQ, emotional intelligence, okay? This isn't just a leadership experience. This is something that will be for the masses throughout your organization. Assessment tools are now priced at $1 or $10, and they're just as accurate as the ones that cost $10,000. Okay. Christoph Brown came out with the biggest study, most experienced researcher on performance. Okay, if you look at the table, her table, the last row, know-how, the technical skills, prior experience, resume, reference checks, that's the lowest indicator of performance. That's what we all focus on or have been. 62% of companies focus on that. Only 30%, 1 in 3, get to the capability, the can do, through behavioral interviewing, simulations, job trials, intelligence testing. But that's costly, it takes a long time and not consistent through a company. And then only 6% of companies get to the want to, the heart, the motivation and cultural fit measures, okay? There are now tools that can give it to 99% of companies at a very affordable price without consultants, okay? This factor is predicting quality hire. Another article, 50% on the left there, 50% rely on the resume, 50% will fail. 10% of predictors are skills experience. The bottom part here, essential predictors are cultural fit, managerial fit, job fit, okay, career move. That's where you need to focus, okay? That should be 50% evaluation. Most companies don't have tools for that. So Humantelligence, and then we'll be done. My company. Okay, we have a self-assessment that does measure not only behaviors like all the other grandfather assessment tools out there, but unlike them, we also measure motivators and work styles in 9 to 12 minutes, No other tool in an hour can do what we do in 9-12 minutes. From that, you get insights, but you can give it to everybody and get lots of data from lots of employees. So you get culture analytics and insights around high performers, low performers, around what the best retail stores look like versus the bottom retail stores. HR can now go to hiring managers and P&L leaders and say, hey, Bob, you're hiring wrong. Hey, Mary, you're hiring wrong. Look at the top 5 retail stores and how they're performing. Look at the composition of the culture in those stores and look at you in the bottom 5 performing stores. Now you actually have to listen to HR. You can't keep hiring who you think is the right fit. You need to hire like this, and we have a tool that will help you. And then our tool can be used for talent fit. 0 to 100, red, yellow, green, scorecard, 1,000 applicants. Don't bother talking to any of them or even look at their resume. Give them a tool for free to assess them so you get who will fit first, and then look at the resumes of the 20 people, not the 1,000, and end up with your final 5 in a week versus 5 weeks. And then we have a whole battery of engagement tools, but engagement tools, I'm sorry, anybody has them. They're easy to create. We actually throw in all the engagement, feedback surveys, pulse surveys, action management systems, drive strategic actions and measure if people are doing them. We actually throw all that in for free. There's just a lot of Me Too products out there and they're not hard to build. Okay, you benchmark first, you assess candidates, and then you get a scorecard. Our tool is EEOC compliant. It's 12 minutes. We can cut it to 9 if you don't want life priorities, the top left piece, which life priorities, that piece of our questionnaire is a survey of the 36 questions, about 4 minutes. The other 3 are actually science, so they're not a survey. We don't ask someone, are you deliberate or decisive? We figure it out through the algorithms of the science. This is a tool that's been around 30 years. Our chief scientist used to charge $10,000 per person, like all the other great assessment tools. We are now pricing it between $10 and $1, depending on volume usage. Okay, small companies, SMBs out there, 300 employees or less, you can go to our website, okay, www.humantelligence.com, go to pricing, and you can see the pricing for all the different modules. Larger companies, give us a call and we'll chat with you because it's more of an enterprise system. We've integrated to all other systems. So instead of it being 3 months, we spend a lot of money, more money on this than anything else. It's not a separate icon. Our data flows right into your applicant tracking system, whether it's Taleo, iSIM, Smart Recruiters, whatever. All the data will flow right into your HRIS systems. Okay, we measure behaviors like everybody else. Bottom left there, the orange, we measure the top right, motivators, and we measure the bottom right, ideal work styles. Again, nobody else can do that in less than an hour. We do it in 9 minutes, another 3 or 4 minutes to life priorities. This is the process. You give it to your hiring manager, the team, and high performers, and then you can filter. We don't find you the 500 resumes. There's tons of tools out there and job boards that will give you lots of resumes. I was a professional recruiter. I could go through 500 resumes in about 4 days, a couple hours each day. And then you're stuck with the 50, 1 in 10 that are great. And then you have the phone screen, subjective, video screen, subjective, and those 30 or 40 hours over 6 weeks, eliminate it, get rid of it. Just give the best 50 the tool for free, okay? And then it'll pop out a ranking. Who's a good fit for the manager? Who's a good fit for the team? Who's a good fit for high performers? Or let's say you're trying to change what high performers look like. You know, the sales role of your company, your manufacturing company is no longer the golf guy who goes over and pats the back. You need a data analytics brain, someone who uses technology, who tracks things online. Well, that's a different profile than what used to succeed. So don't go with what was high performance before. Now create an ideal profile, like an ideal job description with skills. Our tool will show you what you can get for an ideal profile. This is how it pops out. The candidates, you can put in compensation, expectation, and bonus and resume scores. That's manual, but it will give you a fit score for the manager of the group, the ideal and high performers. Okay, in this case, the manager might have loved Christoph at 84 index to the role. The group might have loved the person. This is the test. If they would have interviewed Christoph, they would have hired Christoph, right? People would have loved Christoph. But the reality is, fit with the actual role and what they needed, okay, and fit with the high performers, Christoph is not a good fit. So they do not move Christoph through the process, okay? Now, the bottom candidate, Vlad, not a great fit with the manager. The manager interviewed Vlad, didn't love them, but wait a second. This tool gives the ability for that manager in the group, even though they don't love someone, to say, wow, for what we need in this role, even though they're very different from us, and it might cause some friction, they're gonna be great at this job. This is the holy grail of solving the recruiting problem where people just hire themselves. The ability to get rid of the ego through data, to listen to data on what might make sense based on fit and not on what you think you like. Team culture reports. For the first time ever, you'd be able to get a team culture report. And everybody on this call, if you guys contact us, Gabriella.Garner@humantelligence.com, or just go to our website. I think there'll be an email sent out after this. You can get a free team culture report where you can see, for example, motivators in terms of Humantelligence and our 23 people. My team is too dominant, helping, and freedom. Why? Because when I hired my 20 of my 23, it was before we had this module, and I, professional recruiter, thought I was hiring diversity. My dominance of the 12 things, my dominance were two: helping, there's my little picture, the guy with the green shirt and the glasses, and the second one here in the freedom. And I made the mistake everybody makes. I hired people really helping, really freedom oriented. So now I need to hire people to balance my team. I can't keep hiring people I like. Okay, and if you have 1,000 people in your division or your team, it'll be a bubble chart like this. You're looking at the first accurate mapping of culture that you can get instantly when your 5 team members or 20 or 100 take this assessment. We can deliver this to you for free as a sample if you're part of this HR.com webinar. We reduce 80% of reduction in interviews needed, 30% in productivity for recruiting, or increase in productivity, and a 90% reduction in hiring subjectivity. And the organization gets reduction in turnover. We usually get 30% of that. Reduction in turnover with our tool, improve engagement, optimal team performance. Again, everybody on this call gets a free assessment and team culture report. Some organizations that have benefited here, and I'll stop there, Sylvie, for your closing remarks and the ability to maybe stay on for a demo.
All right. Well, I'd really like to thank you for this very informative webcast today. Thank you, everybody, and please enjoy.